Here we go. Cross your fingers.
Oh, this only works with the phone.
And please, everybody, please mute, keep yourselves muted. So we keep the background noise to minimum.
So Chris is here, Steve is here.
Are we muted?
1 minute. No,
Okay.
I'm thinking Dale is here, she's religious.
All right, I think we're live. Everybody please mute. Welcome to our January forum. We're pleased to see everybody. We hope everybody had
Very important. The West Side is doing very badly.
if you all can mute yourselves, that would be awesome. Thank you. And I'm going to keep admitting people. This is our January, our first meeting of 2022. And we are, in this meeting, going to focus on our newly elected New York City local representatives. Councilmember Shauna Abreu from the 7th District, Councilmember Gail Brewer from the 6th District, and Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine. Next month, we will focus on our state electeds. And at the end of the meeting, we'll do our community news. So hold your thoughts, hold your announcements. And I'm going to turn it over to Liz, who is going to moderate this. And we're going to get started with our new council member, Abreu. Liz, it's all yours.
Very
Great.
nice.
Thanks, Chris. And I guess I'll just repeat the request to please mute yourselves. I would be grateful if you could do.
I think you're muted, Liz.
Unmute. Okay. I just finished asking everybody to please mute themselves. So I think I took it a little too seriously. Anyway, as Chris said, welcome to the first forum of 2022. We're very excited to be talking to our newly elected local representatives. And so on our program tonight, we have Sean, as Chris already mentioned, and he is here with us now. We had a little bit of competition for time with Gail and Mark, who are attending the vigil for Michelle Go in Times Square tonight, but they will be dialing in, they say around 7 o'clock. So this actually works to your advantage, Sean. You've got like a lot of time here, but that's good because we want to hear from you. You're new to the district council. And I don't know if you had a chance to review the questions, the Word file that I sent yesterday, and there's a lot of questions, but I think what we'd like to do is to give you the floor first and tell us, what you're thinking of, what your agenda is for your first term on the district council.
Well, thank you, Liz. Thank you, Chris. I want to thank the Upper West Side Coalition of Block Associations and community groups for having me tonight. And of course, I'd like to extend my heartfelt condolences to the Asian woman who was shoved into the pathway of a moving train car. It is a untimely, terrible thing that happened and really speaks to the moment we're living in today. But let me just say that you all are a critical voice in our community. And I want to make sure that I represent your voice on the city council. And I'm confident that we'll be great partners over time. For those who don't know me, my name is Sean Abreu, and I have the privilege of representing District 7, which goes from the Upper West Side on 96th Street up to Washington Heights in the city council. I have the distinct privilege of following Councilmember Levine in the city council, and I look forward to hearing from him as well as Councilmember Brewer tonight. We're in for a great evening with them and with you. I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about my story because it really informs many of my priorities. So I grew up in District 7. When I was a kid, my family was evicted from our home after my parents lost their jobs. We bounced around a lot, and I wound up getting held back in school in the 4th grade for failing the state reading exam. It was a rough time, but we had a lot of people looking out for us, and eventually things started to turn around. My mom landed a job at Zabar's in the Upper West Side, where I'm sure many of you know. She's been there for over 20 years. My dad landed a union job. He's a janitor at the Port Authority, and he has been there for more than 20 years as well. I enrolled in an after-school program at Columbia, which helped me get into college and on the path to law school. From there, I was able to start my career as a tenant rights attorney. And I started to help out families that were struggling in the same ways that my family once did. My background, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, informs my love of our community. And tonight, I want to talk to you about how we can improve our neighborhoods, particularly when it comes to quality of life issues that I know that many here really care about. And I'd like to begin first with my sidewalk agenda for District 7 and the Upper West Side. Our sidewalks are truly the foundation of our city. At their best, they can be hubs for a thriving community. In New York City, when you walk down the street, you should see full and bustling storefronts. You should feel safe navigating the environment without fear that a scooter or an e-bike will hit you or your family. And you should not see days-old trash, years-old scaffolding, or rats of the size of your pet on our streets. So how do we get there? It's a shame that today, walking down the street, you see many storefronts that used to hold neighborhood establishments. We need to do everything we can to support the mom and pop stores and bring small businesses back to our neighborhoods. I want to offer low interest loans and offer other support for small businesses, including micro businesses hit hardest by the pandemic. This will also help bring in new business built by innovations and entrepreneurs who will see an opportunity to set up in the very community that they were raised in. For me, that's important. I want to implement an empty storefront tax, which will discourage property owners from keeping storefronts vacant, while of course providing exemptions to those who are actively pursuing commercial tenants. I think that that's going to be vital to maintaining the commercial vibrancy of our neighborhood, but one that's done in a way to support our small businesses. It's no secret either that our sidewalks are clogged with traffic. Too often we've seen members of our community get hurt by e-bikes and e-scooters swerving on the sidewalk. I don't think that's okay. We need to regulate our bike lanes so they're safer and make sure that everybody stays in their lane. You know how frequently I hear from older adults in my district that that bikes and e-scooters are everywhere and that they can't navigate our streets, and that's an injustice. And for community members with cars, I believe the city should offer free residential parking permits to ensure that residents from our community are given priority for vehicle parking. We know that our neighborhood is often just used as a way for folks to park their cars, folks who don't live in our neighborhood, just so they can go to work. And of course, I'll take into account perhaps have carve-outs for folks who can't afford the residential parking permits. For the most part, it'll be free for folks who are in dire need. And but you know, to the extent that we can use some proceeds from this permit to help our city's infrastructure, especially our public transportation. That's something that I'm really exploring. So I take that back, not free for everyone, but I think we could use it as a revenue source, but there should be carve-outs for folks that are in need, like our older adults, folks with disabilities, etc. I also know that making our subway and bus systems more accessible is an efficient way to cut down on congestion, pollution, and accidents in the process. And while we're at it, let's get trash picked up and the snow cleared. Trash left out for days is one of the main drivers of rats in our streets. I can't think of a night where I'm walking by with my girlfriend down the street where she doesn't have to climb onto me because she sees a rat, a massive rat. And it's just the most I've ever seen it in my lifetime here. And it's really something that needs to be addressed head on. I want us to invest in enclosed trash storage, which will keep trash from sitting on the streets for days. And hopefully that would mean less visibility of rats on our streets. If we want streets that are clear of garbage, rats, and ice buildup, we need to fully invest in traditional sanitation methods, but innovative as well. Finally, I want to recognize too that we need public safety in our communities. And I've been a very strong proponent of that on the campaign trail, which for many, it's refreshing to hear. I want to spearhead a task force composed of residents, police precincts 26, 30, and 33, which comprise my district, community boards, public service area 6, and more to strengthen community-based policing and neighborhood collaboration. I do support additional patrols in our neighborhood. And that being said, I also know that we cannot just be reactive. We must also go to the root of the problem. Our mayor often talks about prevention and intervention. The truth is that there are a lot of crimes that happen that public safety just by itself can't correct. And so we need to address intervention to address crimes in real time. But at the same time, we need to address the root causes of that, which is why we need to have greater investments in mental health programming and support for people in need, making sure folks have access to jobs, have access to housing opportunities, access to education. These are very important centerpiece to what we need to accomplish to help address the root cause of incarceration, but also the issues that come with public safety. My sidewalk agenda calls for supporting our small businesses and stores, decongesting our streets and keeping people safe. If we do that, we'll have some of the most livable streets in this country. And this is New York, and we cannot settle for anything less. The Upper West Side Coalition, Borough President Levine and Councilmember Brewer have been great advocates on these issues. And I can't wait to work with all of you going forward. Thank you for having me tonight, and I'm happy to answer any and all questions that you have.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sean. That was a nice overview. And I think you must have read the questions I submitted, because I think you touched on everything that was there, except maybe the helicopters, but I'm not sure if that affects your district.
That was, I think that's for the borough presidents, but I did address a lot of I wanted to be comprehensive and take into account your questions. And I'm sure that there are nuances within those questions that I'm happy to explore and learn more.
Okay, so let's open up to the Zoom room, to the members of the Upper West Side Coalition. Is there anybody who has a question for Sean?
Maybe you all can use the hand raising function and we can call on you.
I saw Neil. What?
I see Dale's hand, physical hand up.
Okay. Okay, Dale, yeah.
Yes, Sean, I'd like to ask you a question about the scaffolding in your district. And if you know if some of the scaffolding has been up for a very long period of time, and is it drawing more rats, more homeless? I mean, do you have a take on any of that?
That's a very good question. And you are not the first person to ask me this question, which speaks to an issue that we must address. There is a bill that I believe was proposed by Ben Kalos about a year or two ago that I will make sure to fight. There are a lot of scaffolds. The scaffolding laws permits scaffolds to be up for too long. And my goal is to pass legislation that would remove the scaffold as soon as possible, to the extent that the projects aren't being harmed. But they're around for too long, and of course that invites a lot of things. But it's something that it's really, I think the scaffolds thing in our neighborhoods are a nuisance that I will address.
Yeah, and let me just ask people in the Zoom room, before you ask your question, if you could just briefly introduce yourselves. So that was Dale Brown, who is president of the West 79th Street Block Association. But it's a good question. In fact, somebody submitted a question very specific to the scaffolding on 104th Street. And we've touched on this issue in previous meetings at other forums. And one of the things that we always ask is, what can we, as either individual residents of a neighborhood or as a block association, do to help you or work with you to address the scaffolding problem? Is there anything we can do?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I've actually, upon seeing your question, I asked my team to look at the existing law that's being proposed on scaffolds, because it might be something that was introduced, but a new member needs to take on. So once we identify that legislation, we're happy to engage to address the scaffolding problem.
Somebody needs to go on mute. Sorry, Sean.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, once we identify that law, then I'm happy to come back and meet with the leadership or with all of you to see if we agree with what the law looks like, because then we can apply the pressure we need to actually get it done. So whether it be, a rally in City Hall or what have you, I'm sure that Gail will also be very supportive. And so we can join forces there. I know it's a huge issue in the Upper West Side, and it's a huge issue in my district.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, Holly, could you introduce yourself first, please, and then ask your question?
Sure. My name's Holly Rothkopf. I'm on the West 64th through 67th Street Block Association with Chris. And I live on West 66. And I know in meetings with, and maybe Gail Brewer can answer this too, when she was borough president, she said a problem with the scaffolding and the reason they can't come down is because there are some businesses that can't afford to do the necessary repairs to be able to take the scaffolding down. So how would your proposed legislation impact this situation?
That's a very good question. And I'm trying to figure out, to what extent are all scaffolds up because of the lack of repairs? I think that there are buildings where repairs are done and scaffolds stay up because of scaffold laws. Obviously, where there is a need for repair, I would have to figure out alternatives to expedite repairs because we want to take down the scaffolds. But I don't have the exact answer at the moment.
Okay. Okay, I'm looking for hands.
Thank you for raising your concern. I'll bring that back to my team.
I see Neil's got his physical hand up.
Okay.
And I'm going to
Neil?
try to get him to unmute.
Okay.
Sorry about that. My name is Neil Burson. I'm co-president of the West 90s Neighborhood Association, Sean. I also work with the coalition. I work with the 2-4 precinct on its advisory council and various other local entities, groups. So at the 2-4, I have proposed a 3-pronged plan about how to deal and manage the threats posed to pedestrians by e-bikes, e-scooters, and similarly powered means of conveyance. And that plan involves registration, licensing, and enforcement. And I would like to share those ideas with you, make you familiar with them, and see if we can come up with some support for addressing this either on a pilot basis or citywide, because I think it really addresses the core of the problem and it will increase our safety and prevent the kinds of occurrences and the threats that seniors especially feel as they try to navigate our streets.
I would absolutely would very much like to have that discussion with you.
Great, I'll reach out to you.
As I've mentioned before, right, when there's greater accessibility, there also comes more obligations with it, right? And we have to prioritize pedestrian safety, particularly for older adults. But at the end of the day, it's for everyone.
Right.
And so Emmett is on this, he's on the Zoom here. He's my public engagement and directive communications director. And he's the one who will be a point person to addressing policy issues in the 7th, in CB7. And so that would pertain to the work you guys are doing.
Great, thank you. I look forward to our dialogue.
You know, we had a forum on traffic safety last fall, and one of our guest speakers was Hilda Lynn Colon Hernandez, you know, from Los Deliveristas. And I wonder, do you work with them or do you know her?
I don't know them. I mean, they've championed what I think very incredible work with making sure that the deliveristas have more rights with respect to workplace conditions. But I'm happy to have discussions with them more broadly about the impact of pedestrian safety.
Okay. Okay.
Liz, I see Rich Robbins has his hand up.
Great.
Hey,
Okay.
Chris, thank you so much. And Sean, great to meet you. We haven't met yet, but I just want to pile on the scaffolding issue because I heard from a prominent community member complaining about a specific issue with schools. So I know it's a known issue, but to the extent you're looking into scaffolding, there are a number of schools. The specific one was blanking the name, Manhattan School for Children.
You know which block that's
Scaffolding
from?
has been there for years, and I know that's out of your district, but I think a joint force, and I know Gail's on this as well.
Yeah.
But an important issue, especially because with the schools, they have the money. It's just a matter of it's been years for some schools where they've had basically permanent scaffolding, and I'm worried that landmarks might start landmarking the scaffolding. We don't want that. I'd love to chat about any number of other issues, but I'm just going to go with that one for now. Thank you so much.
I'll definitely look into that, Richard. And look, if Gail is working on this, you better believe I'm also going to be working on this with her. We might as well address them at the same time while we're at it.
I see Peter Fischoff's hand up.
Hi, Sean. Very nice to be meeting you. I'm the volunteer coordinator for the West 103rd Street Open Street Community Coalition, and our project is Park to Park 103, which would connect Riverside Park to Central Park with Douglas at its heart. And two of our partners are on the Frederick Douglass campus, Hostling International, as well as the NYCHA Tenants Association. And the interesting challenge here, we're very lucky to have the services of the City Cleanup Corps and the Hort on our open street, but open streets are administered by DOT, and DOT has no authority within NYCHA. So our friends at NYCHA would very much like to have the services of the Hort and the CCC, but DOT has no jurisdiction. So I'm hoping our elected, our vision is to connect Central Park to Riverside Park with Douglas at its heart. Douglas should be the easiest part of it because it's already just a pedestrian path that needs some enhancements there. But we would also like to get the benefit of the City Cleanup Corps services there, and DOT can't do that because of this jurisdictional oddity. So I'm hoping, since that's in your district, that you might be able to help us resolve this. Everybody wants to do it, but we don't know how to make it happen.
Yeah, I'm aware of your organization. Let's definitely, this is something we should definitely sit down on and really have further discussion about.
Right.
I live on 104th and Manhattan Avenue.
Oh, wonderful.
I need to learn more about the project. I would like to. I may have a lot of questions, but let's definitely sit down and meet very soon. Let's make that happen.
We would very much look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you, Peter.
Let's see, Gail. Yeah, Gail Dubov. You're on mute, Gail.
Okay, thank you very much.
And please introduce yourself. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Gail Dubov. I'm president of the West 83rd Street Block Association. So Sean, I don't know if you're familiar with my latest crusade, which is to be to have taken a vocal stand against the proposed design for the 79th Street Dockhouse. I know it isn't in exactly your district, but I think that Riverside Park is everybody's park. Are you familiar with it at this point?
I am not.
Okay, so I am going to ask you to take a look, or I can actually send you any information on it.
Please do.
It's been written up in the West Side Rag. It's been written up in the West Side Spirit. There's a lot of community opposition to the current proposed design. And this is a $90 million project that I, for one, and I think there's a lot of other people standing behind my opinion, needs to be revised. So I'm just asking you to please take a look at it. And hopefully you will be behind proposing a new design.
Yeah, send your thoughts, along. I'm going to be deferring to Gail more likely, but I'm happy to speak with her.
Yeah, she's aware of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to have discussions with Gail about the project, but I'm going to let her take the lead.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Sean, your email address just came across a scroll. Can you have that done again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I saw that quickly too, but I didn't write it down fast enough.
I'm gonna put it in a few times. How's that?
Let me just say, if you all click on the button that's called chat, it will come up in a separate
There it
box
is.
for you.
There it is. Okay.
So that's my
Great.
email. And like, if you have any questions, I'll get my team. I'm gonna get my team on it, right? And we're gonna make sure we get answers back to you. I do want to be a partner on the scaffolding law. I think that's low hanging fruit, and it's something that would have a huge impact on our quality of life. So let's
yeah.
definitely keep working on that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other hands there? Okay. Well, did you have, as you probably know, crime is on everybody's mind right now. And so there was recently some news last week about the new DA's proposed progressive policies that downgrade felonies to misdemeanors, and a lot of people are very concerned about it. We have a difficult summer on the Upper West Side with the homeless people being put in hotels, and there were some side effects of that. So is there anything you would like to just say to the community about to reassure the community that the city is not going soft on crime? Any words there?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, I endorsed Eric Adams for mayor. He endorsed me. I think we have a mayor who has a very strong appetite for public safety, and I have a strong appetite for it as well. I don't think we should be heavy-handed, but we should make sure that we have a stronger presence on the ground of more officers on patrol, and that's something that I supported on my campaign trail. But again, like as I've mentioned before, right? Intervention in real time is very important, but I do not believe that having a cop on every corner will prevent crime, right? We saw what happened. There's a pattern in all of the crimes we're seeing in mental health being a huge problem, and if folks aren't getting the treatment they need, if they're not getting their medication they need, things will happen, and that's the tragic part of all of this is that there's so much more we can do on investing in mental health and treatment for folks to get the services and care they need. And for me, it's something that's very front and center on my agenda, and I'm going to be very reasonable about this. I think intervention and prevention go hand in hand, and that has been a message on my campaign, and I'm going to make sure I deliver that as part of government.
Okay.
I can jump in with a question. I know that after school programs are a priority for you. I think everybody here was a student if they didn't raise some students themselves. So schooling is important to everybody in the community. So can you tell us how you plan to address what is an equity issue in our districts, disproportionality of access to after school programs? Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So I think that we need a staple of my campaign is universal after school. I think that every child should get access to an after school program. It's not only a facet of childcare, but when you think about the social isolation that our kids had to go through with remote learning, after school programs address the social interactions, but also address the academic aspect that our children need. Learning loss has been at an all-time high. And so we need to make sure kids can make up that lost time through additional schooling, but also in a way that's keeping them engaged and that they're having fun with it. Of course, having universal after school is very expensive. And so we have to figure out ways to be able to fund, program like this and where we prioritize it, so that is done in a very reasonable way. But of course, I'm going to prioritize the residents of our district in so doing.
Thank you for that.
Melissa, and you're still on mute, Melissa. Thanks.
Muted. Hello,
Now
very
we can
nice.
hear you.
Can you hear me? Very, very nice to meet you and congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
Becoming a council member representing a district a little bit north of mine. I'm with the West 80s Neighborhood Association and some other nonprofits as well. I wanted to ask you a question about any kinds of environmental initiatives that you may have, including a bill that we don't know why, strangely, was pulled at the last minute by former Mayor de Blasio, the Skip the Stuff bill, which would have addressed single-use plastic pollution, including the plastic cutlery that automatically goes into the the takeout. So I'm involved with a number of plastic pollution coalitions, trying to cut down plastic waste. And so anyway, I was wondering if you had any environmental initiatives that are near and dear to your heart and that you'd like to introduce some legislation to address those problems.
Yeah, I would definitely support that. I mean, we need to get rid of plastic everywhere. That's easy for me. But broadly speaking, there are a lot we can do. For instance, there's Local Law 1 of 2004, which would require the stronger enforcement of lead prevention. Lead is exposed for a lot of our youth and our kids. I mean, all types of families, really. As you know, the Climate Mobilization Act passed 2 years ago. How are we going to achieve that buildings are achieving their carbon emission levels by 2030 and 2050? It's a lot of buildings are going to have to really figure out ways to be in compliance with these ambitious goals. And so how can the city step in to make sure that our buildings are reaching those reduced levels? At the same time, there are a lot of buildings that were exempted from the Climate Mobilization Act. Public housing buildings, HDFCs, and a host of other buildings. How are we making sure that we're reducing emissions in those buildings as well is going to be a huge priority for me. There is, making sure that our buses are electrified. I know there was a bill that passed by WEAC very recently on that. I want to make sure that we're electrifying where we can and really making sure that we are ready to combat climate change head on. There are, a lot of food security policies. I want to make sure we're bringing urban farm to our school buildings for our kids and hydroponics. I think that would be very cool, but also very good for the environment and keep our children engaged. There's a lot more that is on our agenda, and we'll be happy to share that.
That's great.
Thank you.
Chris, I just want to check in with you because I don't see everybody who's in the room, and I wondered if anybody's joined.
I'm told that Mark Levine will be with us shortly. So, but otherwise, and I'm not seeing any other hands up. So, oh, I see an iPhone hand up. iPhone, tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Edward Soloway, and I, along with Neil Pearson, I'm a co-president of the West 90s Neighborhood Association. I don't know why my name's not showing up. It just says iPhone. I'm also president of my condominium building on Riverside Drive. Thank you for taking my question. Before I ask my question, I want to just state something about the scaffolding, which started this meeting. Our building is involved in a Local Law 11 project now. We call it a sidewalk bridge, by the way. I've learned from engineers. Scaffolding is from the top down, a bridge is from the bottom up. And we have had this sidewalk bridge for over 2 years, and we haven't started work yet. And I'm positive that if not for COVID, of course, COVID is tragic in the worst ways. This is the least problem of COVID, but there are delays in getting inspections and getting engineers and architects working with landmarks. We're in a landmark district. There's delays in everything, in legal. And then we had a hurricane, I think it was Ida, came in, and Ida brought new dimensions, new water damage in our building. And in some ways we had to start from scratch. Once, please God, that COVID's over in the spring, you're going to see a lot of construction begin. And so that's my point. So my question has to do with parks and the Department of Forestry regarding trees. And I have a rapport with Dan Garodnick, and I've spoken to him about the dead limbs and dead trees in Riverside Park and in cross streets. They're everywhere. These are 80-year-old giant trees that are failing. And you can see starting in April, when the leaves come out, you will see clearly which limbs, which branches, which trees are a hazard to us. So we do this local law by law. I mean, that's the word, law, face huge fines. And it's a wonderful, wonderful law because it lets all of us walk around New York City without looking up, without worrying what might drop on our head. But there's no such law for trees. You may remember maybe 2 years ago, a gigantic tree at 91st Street, right at the edge of Riverside Park, fell. And it hit 4 people on a park bench, broke their heads open. It was just horrible. And I've expressed frustration to Margaret Bracken, who is the head of head architect of the Riverside Park Conservancy, and Dan. And what they tell me is they have nothing to do with trees. They say it's forestry. And I say, well, forestry is excellent, top notch at picking up trees and limbs once they're on the ground, once they've hurt people. But is there, and here's my question, sorry. Is there a survey? Can you find out? Can you contact forestry? Say, is there an Upper West Side survey of trees in trouble, limbs in trouble? If you walk in the promenade inside Riverside Park, you'll see 1,000, 1,500-pound limbs over the promenade where hundreds of people walk every day. And I think this is something you can help quickly and efficiently with, and really press forestry. They're sort of a shadow. It's not the right word. They're a mystery to me. The Department of Forestry in New York City and what their plan is to keep us safe as we protect people from bricks falling off of our skyscraper buildings. What are they doing to manage the trees? Thank you very much.
Well, Ed, I appreciate your passion on this issue. What we need to figure out is, first, I would appreciate if maybe the coalition can put together a list of questions to send over to my team so we can make sure we address them head on. I think what we need to do, Ed, on your question is first see what the current existing laws are, look at which agency is charged with it, and see why there's a gap in regulating that. And to the extent there is a gap and something doesn't exist to address your issue, then that's where we can really work together with Gail and other legislators to address that gap you carefully articulated.
Great. This is a win-win. I think you can do it. This is a type of problem that you don't have to climb a mountain to come out with results for everybody. So some of these other topics, homeless, the mentally disturbed, I don't know how there's an answer for everyone, but dead trees and dead tree limbs, you're the man. You're gonna get this right.
It's low hanging limbs, right? No.
Low hanging limbs.
So listen, I'm just so grateful. We have the handball president here. I don't want to take away time away from him, but I'm so grateful. April, it's been a while since I've seen you. It's so nice to see you on the ball president's team. Thank you so much. Am I good to go now?
Yes. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
And we'll get that list of questions to you and Emmett.
Yeah, please gather all of the questions. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, so I see Mark in a car. This is live, right? Well, thank you very much for joining. How was the vigil? Uh-oh, now he's frozen.
Must be going under an underpass or something.
Okay.
Hundreds of people and dozens of elected officials. And I think we all felt strength in the unity and determination to attack the underlying problems that this tragic death exemplifies. So I know that'll be some of our topics here tonight, but thank you for accommodating my schedule tonight.
Right. So, Mark, what we're doing is, as you know, we're speaking to the newly elected leaders, and we'd like to give you the floor for a few minutes to talk about your agenda as Manhattan Borough President, and then, just for a few minutes, and then we'll take questions from the coalition members who are here in the Zoom room. So,
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I'm honored to have a chance to speak to you in what is just my third week on the job as your new Manhattan Borough President. I did have the chance to work with many of you over the years representing the 7th Council District. Shout out to Sean Abreu, who is already off to an amazing start, carrying on in the 7th District. Really excited to continue to partner with him. And excited to work in my new role here as your borough president, taking over at a time of crisis for this borough, for this city, starting with the public health crisis, which is now stretching into its 3rd year. Thankfully, it seems like we're coming off the worst of the Omicron surge, but I know that COVID will be a challenge for us for some time. We need to manage it to the point where it no longer disrupts our life, so that we can pivot to some of the broader goals that we have to tackle in this borough, broader goals in public health, the generational threat of climate change and resiliency, the imperative of tackling inequality that has been so revealed and exacerbated over the last 2 years and beyond. And we have urgent matters closer to home in every neighborhood of this borough on the Upper West Side, as illustrated by the horrible death of Michelle Go, the tragic death of a 19-year-old Crystal Nieves, who was working in a Burger King in East Harlem just a week ago. We have to focus on the safety challenges of the city, of the mental health challenges, challenges of lack of access to adequate housing. All of these are connected. I know they're top of your agenda as we head into the program tonight. And I will be working with you and listening to you and partnering with you to improve the Upper West Side and the borough more broadly, whether the issue is health, safety, livability, economic vitality, preserving our parks, bringing back small business and the arts. All of it is on my agenda now as your new borough president. I think I'm going to pause the opening statement there because I understand you have a lot of questions and I'd like to get to as many as possible. So I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I'm going to open up the floor now to questions. Does anybody want to kick off? Neil Burson. Again, I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself to Mark.
Sure. Hi, Mark. I'm Neil Burson. I'm co-president of the West 90s Neighborhood Association. I live in the district that you used to represent. Now you represent all of us, which is great news. Congratulations on your.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks so much.
I want to talk specifically about the new district attorney, Mr. Bragg, and the policy directives that he issued to his staff. I am a former prosecutor and I am outraged by those directives in some respects. While I recognize the need to give prosecutors certain levels of discretion in how to charge crime, and we hope that they don't abuse their discretion in that regard, the message that these directives send and the actual practical effect of them is horrendous as far as I'm concerned. And it does conflict seemingly with Mayor Adams' agenda and what he ran on. So what's your views about it? And what, if anything, are you going to do to try to get the course on the right direction?
Well, I know DA Bragg well as someone who I have enormous respect for, and have talked to him extensively on these questions before each of us took office, and we've also spoken recently. as we both taken on our new roles. And he shares twin goals that I also hold, which is the goal to an imperative to make our borough safer, to advance public safety on every front, and the dual goal of making our criminal justice system more fair. And what he says to me is, first and foremost, that he considers there to be an urgent need to tackle the rise in serious crime, the violent crime and gun crime in particular, and that he is focused intensely on that. And that he also unambiguously wants to limit and reduce low-level crime as well. And I'll let him speak on his own behalf, but as he's explained it to me, he thinks that sometimes sending someone to Rikers for a low-level nonviolent crime could actually perpetuate recidivism in a way that surging in treatment, whether it's mental health or substance abuse, etc. My own view more broadly is that we need to attack these challenges on every front. And that, yes, policing is one of the strategies. Fair, effective, targeted policing, ideally on the ground, and community policing, building relationships and trust with communities. But that's not the only strategy, that we need to surge resources into tackling the mental health crisis and the homeless crisis, and the proliferation of substance abuse challenges, all of which are intimately connected. We need more psychiatric treatment beds in Manhattan. We've lost 500 beds in the last decade, almost, in Manhattan. We need to do more to get people who are vulnerable and struggling off the street into housing, into supportive housing, into shelter, into treatment. And all of this is connected. And I'm committed to partner with the DA and the mayor and the city council and leaders at the state to push forward what I consider to be a balanced, multi-front effort. And I want to partner with all of you here on the airport side and listen to your concerns and work together to tackle these problems.
Mark, thank you for your nuanced
Thank
answer.
you, Neil.
It is multifaceted. I think you have identified all of the aspects that have an effect on crime and its causes. But still, I am very concerned about the very practical effects of stopping crime and conveying the appropriate message that if you do the crime, you're going to pay some time. And that has nothing to do with the current horrible conditions in Rikers. I think those are a separate issue that needs to be addressed. I don't think you let anybody out or you refuse to incarcerate and remove from society an individual just because you have a crappy jail. I think that's wrong-headed. Anyhow, I appreciate your work and your thoughts on this front, and I know you will do a great job in trying to help.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. That means a lot. Look forward to partnering with you.
Okay, and our next question comes from Melissa Elstein. So Melissa, please introduce yourself to Mark.
Thank you, and unmuted. Hi, Mark.
No introduction necessary, but hey, Melissa, great to see you.
Okay.
Well, for everyone else who may not know, I'm with the West 80s Neighborhood Association, as well as Stop the Chop NYNJ, and both are all volunteer nonprofit community organizations. And my question to you, Mark, and I wanted to thank you for joining our Stop the Chop Coalition on your campaign. So my question now is threefold. And it was interesting in your opening statement that you did mention these important words, which I'll repeat now: climate change, resiliency, health, safety, livability, and parks preservation. Because the assault of non-essential helicopters, which are basically tourist and commuter helicopters, do impact all of those things that you mentioned in your opening statement. So my question first is, as a borough president, you have 3 appointees to the Hudson River Park Trust Board. Will you push those appointees, and I'm not sure if you'll be changing those appointees from the previous ones, will you push them to end the use of the Hudson River Park as a part of it as a heliport? And that does have the support of Community Board 4's Waterfront Parks and Environment Subcommittee, as well as probably the whole CB4. 2, will you use the power of your office to end tourist and commuter flights from all of the heliports, Manhattan, that are, by the way, all located in Manhattan, south of 4th Street? That seems like an awfully large number of heliports for a small area of land. And maybe people don't remember, but one heliport, the East 60th Street one, was actually closed by Mayor Giuliani when he was mayor. And then third, this is more practically, I'm not sure if you will be taking over Gail Brewer's helicopter task force group that she created when she was the borough president, or if Gail will be continuing that. And I did want to give a shout out to April Adams, who was on earlier, and great to see wonderful April on this Zoom. So those are my 3 questions. If anyone needs any reason for why we should be banning the fossil fuel guzzling, noise polluting, safety risking helicopters that crash basically, every 2 years we've had a deadly crash, look at our website, and I'll put that in the chat. But I look forward to hearing your answers, Borough President Levine.
By all means, Melissa, thank you. I have been active on this issue for years. It's impacted my former council district and many other parts of the borough of Manhattan. I absolutely support a ban on non-essential helicopter traffic, and will use the powers of my office to advance towards that goal, including the fact that we have 3 appointments on the Hudson River Park Trust. And we're still examining those and almost all of the nearly, actually over 1,000 appointments that we have on too many boards and bodies to mention. So we're still working our way through that, but I will make that a priority to use my influence on Hudson River Park to end the business of non-essential helicopter traffic from that heliport and the other heliports in Manhattan as well. This is also a federal issue, which we need action at that level because it's too easy for some of these flights, not the commuter flights as much as the tourist flights, to relocate to New Jersey. And some of that's already happened. So we really want a bi-state solution that requires federal action. And our congressional partners like Congressmember Nadler, Congressmember Velasquez, and others have legislation pending. And we're also making a direct appeal to the Biden administration and Federal Transportation Department. And I certainly will be continuing the helicopter task force and certainly continue to partner with my wonderful and amazing predecessor, the great Gail Brewer, on this and many, many other issues. She's been outstanding on the helicopter issue, like so much else. So we will continue to work hand in hand on this. Thank you, Melissa.
Sorry, I was on mute. To that end, I see that Gail has joined. Hi, Gail.
How are you? I'm in a cab going back to City Hall, so I can try, but I don't know how well.
Well, there's
not easy.
Okay, there's only a few minutes left, although we could go over, but just don't want to put any pressure on you. But anyway, thank you very much for joining. I know you've had a busy night. We just heard from Mark, who spoke about several things. The helicopters. You probably came in on that a little bit about drags, directives, and things like that. Is there anything you would like to share, either about your agenda or those issues, as we kind of wind down here?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you. And I look forward to coming back when we don't have such a busy evening and sitting down and going through all the many issues that we all care about. I will say sanitation is a big one locally because just this week I went around with the sanitation department to West 72nd Street and it was disgusting, as anybody knows. And so they cleaned it all up. And now we're going to go door to door to the businesses and say, you have a responsibility. I must admit, as we all know, since it's the street that Melissa Go lived on, it's particularly meaningful right now as we just came from the service in Times Square for her. I know that the borough president was there also. So sanitation, and I must have, I don't know, 20 people who have requested places that are particularly egregious, and we'll work on that. I would say second, we're going to work on all the public safety / homeless issues. I have lots of ideas. I always have, for the schools, push social workers. I've been doing it for 20 years. It's just an ongoing issue. Social workers in the schools, social workers with the police department, social workers in general have to be supported, paid, and in plentiful supply. So I would say there is an uptown, as Mark Levine probably knows, something called Be Heard. It's working pretty well. The cops and the social workers go out together. It's made a big difference. And I think that's something that we need to focus on. I'm also very NYCHA oriented. We have a lot of developments. I know them very well. Right now, my biggest challenge, to be honest with you, is the conversion of Wise Towers. I'm not happy with how it's going. Much thanks to Speaker Corey Johnson. When he was there, we did a really great discussion for 2 years when we are planning the conversion, similar with 2 developments on 26th Street. That's not what happened on 90th Street. And so just so you know, I'm putting a lot of time in there in terms of that conversion and what should or should not be happening. And I think, we're going to focus on the schools because it's not just social workers. I'm talking to all the principals, not dissimilar from the rest of the city, but attendance is 40% to 80%, which is usually 92, 3, 4%. And some teachers, 17 out last week in one school and 40 out because they're sick. And so we have to figure out how we're going to get all of these students who have missed sometimes 2 years, not everybody, but a lot of them. And this is more of a citywide issue. And then we want to work on supportive housing. Further uptown a little bit, there are a couple of single room occupancies that are available for purchase. I'm very picky about who purchases, and I'm very picky about the nonprofit. But we should be able to do that. The communities where these hotels are located want supportive housing. They say, please, please, please.
I see, before Gail continues and before we lose Mark, I see Steve Anderson had his hand up and he might have had a question for Mark.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Anderson from 81st Street. I have the responsibility of being the chair of the Upper West Side Coalition. And I just want to say to Mark and to Gail, when we started this group less than a year ago, you two joined up and said you would support our efforts and you endorsed the work that we wanted to undertake. And for that, we are incredibly appreciative. But we also feel a great responsibility to now, despite the fact that you're both in cars traveling and we're talking to you, which indicates a commitment that we respect, we need to play a role and let us be part of the solutions. Let us figure out ways that block associations and community groups can work with you to address ground level, street level issues for which we are very much in contact with our neighbors. And we care about the community. We know you do too. Alas, there's no shortage of issues. And I will throw out to you one that needs to be addressed very soon. And forget about whether you're a car owner on the Upper West Side. Just imagine a resident on the Upper West Side worrying about the fact that we're at the risk now of becoming the largest outdoor parking garage in New York City if we don't figure out strategies to deal with this. So I thank you for your commitment. We congratulate you and we wish you incredible success because we're counting on you and we want to be a part of your success.
Here, here. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Borough President Levine, you're muted. Do you,
Sure,
do you
I'm
want to
here.
speak to
Sorry
that?
about that. Yeah, just very quickly, and it's great to be here with Gail. We were together at a very sad event a few minutes ago. So, Steve, I have been fighting for residential parking permits for years now, and I'm not sure if this is directly related to the issue that you're raising. But I am very worried about the huge number of suburban commuters who drive into the Upper West Side every morning and dump their cars on local streets because they don't want to pay for a garage. You see them circling around early in the morning. You see them sometimes sleeping in their car to wait for a spot, etc. And I am a strong supporter of congestion pricing, and also worry that it will make this problem worse, which I think might have been what you were referring to, Steve, that there'll be more of an incentive for people not only to avoid paying a garage fee, but to avoid paying the congestion fee to dump their car anywhere north of 60th Street, could be Upper West Side, even farther north. This is a big problem, by the way, in Washington Heights as well. And so I want New York City to do what almost all the other major cities in America have done, which is have a program of residential parking permits. I had legislation last term pending in the council, which we're hoping will get picked up again. The previous mayoral administration was quite resistant to this, but we're optimistic now with the new administration that the opportunity is there again, and the urgency is great because of congestion pricing. So again, Steve, I'm not sure if I'm speaking to the issue you were raising, but happy to work with you on this.
Mark, you nailed it. That's absolutely the issue. You're
Okay.
absolutely correct.
That's great. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, right over there.
While we still have the borough president, and because ULURPs are part of the borough president's mandate, Mark, are there any ULURPs planned or in the works on the Upper West Side, or any?
Well, the Disney site is probably the largest and most the one that's coming up first. And actually, I'm meeting with Landmarks West, and my team and I are meeting with Landmarks West, I think next week on this. But I understand there's a proposal to extend the Lincoln Center Special District to provide some protections on the future Disney site, which on the surface sounds like a plan with a lot of merits. And so far, folks I've spoken to have been quite supportive of it. Again, I'm doing the full briefing next week with Landmark West, but I partnered with Landmarks West a lot over the years, and look forward to working with them on this and many other issues.
All right, thank you for that. Maybe we take some final questions for the borough president or for our council member as we're hitting the hour mark.
I was gonna say, Chris, on that topic, I'm very familiar with it, and we'll do as I did elsewhere, obviously not for the extension, because that's a pretty pro forma, and I hope it goes through the council. I know Mr. James will do a great job on presenting, but then we have to deal with the future. And I think having with all the civic groups and the block associations and the community board, a task force to talk about the larger issue is really important. And so I will head that up.
That would be great. And one of the things that the community is also showing interested in, we have some deadlines coming up, is participatory budgeting. Maybe you can give some voice to that.
Yep, we're going to have, the deadline is the 23rd of January. It's very soon. And we will work with all of you on the proposals. I must admit, generally with participatory budget and you end up with the money anyway. I'm just telling you, but we will go through the process and figure out the best proposals. But yes, we will certainly be working with you and the Blacks Associations on volunteers to help us go through all the proposals.
And Gail, I just dropped the information for Council District 6 into the chat, and we also can follow up as well as an email too.
Thank you, Shula.
Liz, do you see any other hands up?
I don't see any.
We see
hands.
Neil. Neil's got another
Just
question.
Okay, I'm
One
not seeing
more
everybody on one.
comment that I would like to make, please. I'd like to share with both Gail and Mark the three-pronged plan that I have devised to deal with the threats posed to pedestrians by e-bikes, e-scooters, and like means of conveyance. They involve registration, licensing, and enforcement. And I'd like to put that in your laps for your consideration. and hopefully eventual support. There are a lot of details and nuances, including harmonization with existing vehicle and traffic law and other such items. But at least I'd like to get this on your agendas and for you to look at.
I will certainly look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I see a hand up. Well, Melissa's hand. I also see
Melissa?
Michelle Riggio's.
Sorry, Neil,
hand
happy
up.
to look at that as well together with Gail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, everyone. This is Michelle Riggio. I'm with the West 111th Street Block Association. I joined a little bit late, so this may have been covered, but I had submitted some questions when I registered. I'll just read them. We just spoke about it, the crisis on the sidewalk. There's an increasing crisis on our sidewalks with food delivery people on electric bikes and scooters, creating hazardous conditions for our pedestrians. There was just a really great recommendation about getting some ideas in front of our elected officials, but I'm curious about, our own president of our block association was beaten when he tried to address the situation on his own, asking somebody who was on a speed bike to stop going on a sidewalk. So this is a real concern in our area. I live above West 110th Street. There's a huge, basically, parking area for food delivery guys to hang out right where there's scaffolding and there's an entrance to a subway, really creating some dangerous conditions. And I'm curious about where the police come in. I mean, I know that people get tickets when they're riding their bikes, even their bicycles for, an outing on the sidewalk. Why is the same policing not happening in this particular situation? It seems like the sidewalks are just overrun by these bikers. That's my first. I just want to know if there's any, is there anything being actively put into place now to help decrease this problem?
And sure, I don't know if Gail is still on and if she
I'm
wants to
still
jump
on.
in, please. If you want to take the first crack at this, Gail, by all means.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to meet with the 2-4 precinct. You're in the 2-4 precinct. And the second issue is I also meet constantly with the delivery people, deliveristas, and they have an organization and they need a couple of strange things. They need a place where they can find a bathroom and get their bicycles charged. And then the deal is they need to follow the rules of the road. So I don't know. I wish I could tell you that the cops are going to be the ones to make sure that happens, that they follow the rules of the road. But I think the other way is the other side of the coin, which is to meet with them and get them to understand that if they're going to be members of our community, and they're workers here, they have to follow the rules of the road. And so I am doing that in addition to putting pressure on the cops. Because it is supposed to be the cops, but I know that they don't love doing that job. I do have many friends who have gotten tickets for riding the wrong way or on the sidewalk, even though they're going very, very slowly. So I don't quite understand who the cops are ticketing, to be honest with you, which is one of the questions I have for them. You're not the only one with this issue. It's huge. So I'm just going to do my very best to address it, but we can't do it just with cops. We have to get the people who are delivering the food. And the other thing is these new dark stores, I hope nobody is patronizing them. People like Gorilla and Joker, they are telling their workers that the person has to get that food in 10 or 15 minutes. That's wrong. It's wrong for the worker, it's wrong for the pedestrian. So that's another challenge that we have. These folks have just popped up in the last 4 months and they're all over the West Side. So that's another challenge that we have, is to say, are you legal? Because I don't think you are. So it's another place that the workers are going to be, in my opinion, hurting pedestrians potentially. So I'm just saying there are many, many ways that we have to attack this problem.
And I'll just quickly jump in. Thank you, Gail, for all you're doing on this. I unfortunately have to hop off in a minute to speak at another Zoom. The business has entirely transformed. The business of delivery, really in the last year or two. It's no longer restaurants hiring people to work to deliver. It is app-based companies that have basically outsourced that work. And now the emergence of the new super fast grocery delivery that Gail's been excellent leading on. And there needs to be some more accountability mechanisms to the companies that are behind all of this, that really only incentivize speed, not safety. And we need a direct line to these companies that are defining the industry, that are defining the terms of delivery, to hold them accountable to fix this. So I would love to work with all of you on this issue. I do apologize, I have to step off in a minute, but accountability directly to the employers, which are app-based companies, is critical.
Thank you.
I'll just say thank you, and I apologize for being rushed, but I'm happy to come back anytime to work with you on these and all the other issues on our table for the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Borough
Mark.
President.
Really, thank you so much.
Let me just quickly, because I see Rich Robbins' hands up, and we should be winding down on the questions because we're now pushing past the hour. And Rich, though, probably has some information relevant to some of the topics we've just discussed. Rich?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on this issue, and there's clear data that motor vehicles kill and injure many more people than bikes or e-bikes. Nonetheless, bikes and e-bikes still are a major cause of concern. And I think a lot of the issue is with the deliveristas, as Gail mentioned. I actually, over the summer, some of you might know, I tried my hand at being a deliverista, worked for DoorDash for a few shifts, just to see what the experience was. Per Gail's point, I did follow the rules of the road and made almost no money. So there's a real problem with these third-party delivery services where if you're working for them and following the rules of the road, you can't make money. So you have to break the law. And so I don't think the sole answer or the main answer is to crack down on the deliveristas themselves. I think we have to look creatively at what's behind the system and look at the economic incentives behind these third-party delivery services. And I could talk a lot more about that, but I won't. On the dark stores, Gail, I completely agree about the 10-minute delivery is just awful. They're basically guaranteeing that their delivery people are going to break the law. Having said that, on one positive note, and I know that there are zoning issues, at least they're paying rent and not working out of the street. And I have as much or more of an issue with Fresh Direct, whose trucks are often parked in moving lanes on Amsterdam and other main streets, creating a real hazard. And it's not like FedEx or UPS where they're parking, making a delivery and moving on. They park for 8 hours at a time and have scheduled shifts where they're just keeping their truck in, blocking a moving lane or blocking views to turning lanes. It's a real hazard. And we heard from the executive officer of the 20th precinct that double parked trucks are a real cause of crashes. So I think that's, it's not just the dark stores that are an issue.
Right.
And I think overall, the answer really needs creativity. We need to figure out what's behind it. The police have a real issue catching cyclists because they're not allowed to go into high-speed chases. We see that with the motorcycles. They're not allowed to chase after them. So I think they end up ticketing the city bike riders going 3 miles per hour through a red light who aren't the real issue just because they're easier to ticket. So we need to be really creative in figuring out what's behind the businesses and not just saying, hey, we gave out all these tickets to cyclists when they're not addressing the problem. So
I agree.
To share many more thoughts, but I know everyone, we don't want to prolong this meeting, but thank you very much.
I just want to point out that Shula has been putting some interesting information in the chat room about, there's a map that Gail's office worked with Beta NYC, a map of dark stores, an article that Gail wrote about, a letter, I should say, that Gail wrote about the dark stores. So if you want to, you can take a look at that information in the chat sidebar. You can actually download the dark stores
I'm
article.
happy to email it also, so that way, if that's easier for folks, then you'll have the attachments as well.
And we're updating the map also. We also did a letter on helicopters too. We also put that in the chat, I think.
Okay, great. Yeah, Shula, you could send it to Chris and me and we'll get it out to the coalition membership.
See Melissa's hand up.
Melissa?
I think this is the last question.
Okay, I'll be quick. Great to see you, Gail, and congratulations on your return to your office. And I hope we'll go back to doing those graffiti cleanups together once it gets warm. So long overdue. Two quick questions. The first one I had also asked Councilmember Abreu about the skip the stuff bill that was about to be signed, and it was the city council had passed it, the previous council, but then it was pulled by Mayor de Blasio. And this is a bill that you're familiar with, and would you be on board with reintroducing it? It's about reducing the plastic pollution that goes in.
Absolutely, yes, 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 yes.
Okay, great. So, and then the second one is also about legislation. And also thank you for holding all of those helicopter task force meetings when you were Manhattan Borough President, for including Stop and Shop and West 80s. Would you consider introducing legislation that had been introduced way back in 2014? And again, that was pulled because of a Mayor de Blasio agreement to end the tourist helicopter leases down at the South Street Seaport.
Yes, well, at the downtown heliport, what you're talking about. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but that's not going to end our problem, because our problem is still New Jersey, as you know. So we're going to work even more with the legislators there, et cetera, et cetera. So as you know, there's so many different ways. And we did do a letter today to, state, city, port authorities saying, please close 30th Street. You should know that one of the people who I appointed, Lode Kearns, former chair board 4, is the most adamant about closing it. So he's very, very, and I think the board wants to close it. You got to get the city, state, and port authority, Melissa, to agree. That's where the pressure should be, not on the Hudson River Trust, if I may say, because I have spent hours on this issue. So your pressure has got to be the mayor, the governor, and the port authority.
Well, appreciate that, and we're happy to learn more how to that cause. And we did notice recently, and I've had neighbors on the Upper West Side wonder about all the helicopters that go up the Hudson and then circle right back down. And those are actually the ones that have returned post-COVID to DMH. And so they are creating a lot of problems for those who are near the river and goes to Broadway. But thank you so much. We appreciate that, Gail.
Okay, yeah. I might get in the elevator, so I'll wait till you finish, because if I get in the elevator, I'm going to lose you. So I don't know.
I think we are going to wind. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think that was the perfect way to end hearing from you all. Thank you, Councilmember Brewer. We look forward to continuing the dialogue. We look forward to getting these documents so we can share them in our newsletters. And we appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gail.
All right. Good night. Thank you very much.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Gail.
Good night, Gail. Good night. Thank you. Thanks, Dale.
All right. And let me just thank Liz DeVito, our program committee chair and moderator of these forums, for another outstanding and informative forum. And just touch on a couple of things. First, this has been a long event, but if anybody has any community news from their neck of the woods that you haven't already had a chance to share, please raise your digital hand. And while you're thinking about that, let me just say, you're going to see now in the newsletters reminders that as we prepare for our second year as a coalition, we need our membership entities to pay some dues so that we can pay our little expenses. Please consider sending submissions to the newsletter. Send them to Dee Reber. She compiles the newsletter. I think she's asking for them next on February 8th. Our next meeting is February 15th, at which we're going to ask and invite our local state electeds to join us. With the coming of the second year, we're going to have another round of elections for our board. From our board is where we get our officers. The officers of the coalition do the operation of the coalition. The board has collective oversight, but the officers then manage the operation, and then we have committees. So if you'd like to get involved, please consider that, and we'll be announcing the process through the newsletters, and that election or selection process will happen in April at our April meeting. I think that's it, unless anybody has any community news they'd like to share.
A lot of people have already departed.
Yeah, and
actually.
we've covered a lot of ground in the last hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
The Mulch Fest events went very, very well. So that was great. They did it twice in Riverside Park at 83rd Street this year, I think because of COVID. And so it was two opportunities to recycle your holiday trees and wreaths and turn them into mulch. So it was really great to be back because we didn't do it last year. And I saw Gail there. We were by the chipper. So anyway, that was a fun, festive event. And, you know, it's great to recycle all that into something healthy and beautiful and smells great for, you know, the neighborhood and our apartments.
Great.
Yes. All right. Thank you all. Have a
Okay,
good
thanks.
evening, and we'll see you again soon.
We'll see you soon. Okay.
Liz.
Bye.